So, Sat Sri Akal Ji, welcome everyone. This week I wanted to begin a conversation of what I've called the crossing and the road marks, the road signs to that crossing. I've put two images in the chat. I've put two images in the chat, and I just wanted to have begin a conversation of, as I said, what I called the crossing. But what I mean by crossing is the crossing the veil, crossing the chasm that divides personal reality from manifest actuality, from what is in the mind of us each individually and what is the collective experience. And as Jesus said, if one wants to be born again, one has to be willing to die. And Guru Nanak and also said, kingdom of God is within. And Nanak also said, if we can and we will go to heaven, why wait until we die? And what I would understand that to mean and experience myself personally is this basic hermetic principle of as within, so below, as above, so below, as within, so without, of understanding that our experience of the world is based on persona mask projection, that none of us are who we chose to be. None of us is living the life we chose to live because we all project a persona mask that's generated out of the fear of being alone, the fear of being systematically cast out from the tribe or the family and having to fend for ourselves at much too early an age to do that. And of course, this is all mental projection, but for us, it's real. From all my experience in counseling and from my own very powerful, acute personal experience, somewhere close to the 42-month period after birth, or 3.5 years, we're ready biologically, that is to say, physiologically, the brain and mentally, or more abstractly, the mind, is the consciousness has developed to the point that it's ready for a necessary transition into this world of duality. And that something happens where we do something that is so far outside of the accepted normal behavior that we get rebuked for that action. We are told, don't ever do that again. Now, it might be something very simple, like saying something that ourselves and our parents or our siblings have a joke with and say regularly, or even it might be an action. Say we have a more jovial family that are into robust or kind of gross humor, where maybe on a Saturday evening we have, excuse the terminology, but kind of flagellant festival at the dinner table. So we're sitting at the dinner table and everybody, it's a family habit to compete who can make the loudest fart during dinner. And that might be acceptable behavior within a more humorous kind of practical joking family. But let's say at 3.5, we're visiting our grandparents. And at 3.5, we haven't distinguished. You don't do it grandma and grandpa's house, what you do at home, particularly on a Saturday evening. And suddenly, as a 3.5-year old child, we play the party trick. And suddenly our grandfather is appalled by this behavior, and we're rebuked. And if we're particularly rebuked, where we're visiting the grandparents without our siblings or without our parents, that we're being babysat, and we do this, there's no one to say, no, it's okay. That's a joke the family plays, but only on a Saturday. That event, which seems to be always, from my experience so far, about 3.5 years, as I said, 42 months. The psychology, the child development is ready for just such an experience. And because the fruit is ripe, that has more to do with this process than perhaps the particular mistaken action and the rebuke. It's just that the system is primed, and we make this erroneous assumption that the child's psychology is not mature enough to recognize that this is not a life-threatening experience. This is just a guardrailing of social practice, but we take it as a threat to our very existence, as if our life might even depend on it, because we've just done something that's so abhorrent that we might get cast out of the family or the tribe. And we have evolved, we have matured enough to recognize that on our own, we don't stand a chance and we're likely to die. And this is a biological, physiological imprint. So we adopt a fear-based or fear-generated persona mask. So persona is as and persona, sown as in sound, and then mask. It's a mask with a particular voice. So we're speaking audibly, and also mask, we're presenting physiologically or physically and mentally. We're projecting a mask in front of us to hide this secret identity we're afraid of anyone knowing about. So this is the development of the persona mask, and this persona becomes a personality because the persona is the filter through which we project our personal reality. So each one of us has this mask in front of us, this allegorical or metaphorical mask in front of us. And so each of us is making a back screen projection onto that mask. We're projecting out the way we want people to see us, so they don't see what we're afraid of them seeing. So the mask is serving two purposes. The mask is hiding something that we're afraid of people knowing about us, and it's also then making a diametrically opposed presentation. This is how we want people to see us. We want them to see us this way, so they'll never even entertain the possibility they could see us in the way or as the thing we're hiding in the shadows. Is that much making sense?
Yes, it does. Vedanta, I've got one question. Is it also possible that when a child takes birth, you don't tell the child anything? You don't tell the child to eat. When the child is hungry, then the child asks. Then the external factors will have minimal effect on the child?
Well, there's a certain degree to that. You know, the child's first physiological development, almost even before the ability to open the eyes and focus, is this sucking motion with the lips. And the first smell the child has, it already has the scent of its mother, an awareness of that from being inside her. And the very first smell the child is programmed is for the smell of milk and the physical ability to find the teat. Now, if we didn't teach the child, if we didn't feed it immediately, it doesn't have the power to crawl to the breast by itself. And without being nurtured by the mother in that way, it's going to die. And it's been attached to the mom, sharing blood, sharing cells, sharing immune system. So it has this attachment to the mother that doesn't end with the cutting of the umbilical cord. And this that relationship actually continues on till we know at least 27, that the mother actually has in her system cells from the child because they were sharing blood, and the mother actually has additional immune system that that the child has shared with her, which means the mother actually has takes on board some of the father's immune system. She has an increased immune system because of sharing blood, an exchange of blood cells with the child that the child's picked up through the genetics. But we can rapidly greatly decrease the amount of influence we physically have on the child by doing as little imprinting sociological. But there is a huge, and I mean huge, amount that heredity, genetics play, and karma plays. that the child can't help but picking up, because we can do all that we consciously intend to not imprint on the child to make them as neutral as possible. The problem is we're imprinted on. We both have a genetic influence through the telomere, the genes, the chromosomes, but we also have social adaptations. The mind can know nothing. The mind can only believe, but those beliefs are inherited, and we sign a social contract much earlier than we're even aware that it's being signed, which is to come into agreement with our parents' socially accepted beliefs. And we can call that that inheritance BS, because it's just bullshit belief systems. Beliefs are nothing more than opinions, and the social beliefs we inherit are bullshit belief systems. But we take them on when we sign that social contract. We take them on unknowingly as truth, and we pass them on to our children unknowingly as accepted truth, because we don't look at it, we don't question it, we certainly don't confront it, unless we wake up enough to realize that the things we just without questioning accept as true might not be true. And this is the great process of awakening, and the process of you could call the beginning of enlightenment. Is that much making sense? And does it answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay. So the other thing, and this is a perfectly timed question, because I mentioned before the back projection on the mask, that we're projecting on the back of this screen or this mask, that creates the figure, our figure in the field. But we're also looking at others through a preconditioned filter lens. So that lens is filtering out certain beliefs and limiting the way we can perceive things. And this is the true nature of karma, that we see what we look for. Karma is not an external force as we tend to think of it. When we recognize that we see what we look for, the reticular activation formation, or what's also called the reticular activation system, is like a network, a neural network at the back of the brain, and it's constantly screening information coming in and looking for things we recognize, because basically the human mind is nothing but a prediction machine. So it's recalling things from the past to predict the future. So notice both of those terms refer to language, to recall and to predict. And so in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Our words, the way we name things, the way we describe them, is the way we describe reality, and it's the way we predict reality. We use words from the past to create words or symbols or things in the future. And others are constantly doing that too. So everyone you meet is a mask, a persona mask with a back projection on it. So we're not seeing them. We're seeing them the way they want to be seen. And we are also not seeing them because we are projecting on a filtered image. So we see what we look for and we filter out all the other information. So this is the problem with romantic relationships is I'm playing a role. I want to be seen in this way. You're playing a role. You want to be seen in this way. That we're more than subconsciously aware of it. We're semi-consciously aware of this. I'm presenting my best face, particularly when we're meeting somebody that we want to like us. But we're less aware, and this is fairly foolish, but we're less aware that the other person is doing the same thing. And we're looking at them, looking with all these criterias. I want this, this, and this, and this. Almost blissfully unaware that the other person has some idea of what we're looking for, and they're playing out to present that image. And then, of course, after 6 to 18 months, maybe 24 months, the mask starts to drop. And by then, we're usually in too deep. So they see some of our flaws or we see some of their flaws, and now we're thinking, ooh, did I make a mistake? But well, no, I've made this commitment. I really want to be the person they want, but I also want them to like me for who I am. And I want to be able to like them for who they are. And in that sense, one of the most powerful things we can do is when we recognize we have a strong attraction for someone, we need to remove first the powerful physical attraction, which is not so much recognized, and that's partially from pure animal instincts. It's for stronger for women. It's this pheromones. It's just how someone smells. If they smell too familiar, it's like, oh, that's like my sister or my brother. And we'll tend to lose interest for that reason. And also then there are other smells that have a dynamic, and the immune system wants someone who's as unlike us as possible, who's diametrically opposed in their chemical makeup, so that they will have immunities to things that we don't have immunities to. So we're making the immune system stronger, more complex. And we have no idea. Most humans have no idea that's going on. But then there's other sociological markers. And so we want to really kind of double check ourselves. What's our karmic relationship to this person? And when I say karmic, we can take that two ways, is our karmic relationship in the sense of what is it that I'm seeing in the person because I want to see it? What is it that they're seeing me because they want to see it? How will I learn? How will their patterns of behavior and patterns of presentation help me become a more whole person? Am I looking for them to make up for the things I feel lacking in, or am I seeing them because they actually bring out the parts of me that are the best in me while accepting the things that I'm low in? We can't expect that other person to fill in the blanks for us, to make it so that we don't have to do the things that we're not good at. But if we can find, oh, that person's generous with their behaviors, that I can learn to be better at the things I'm weak at because of them. but also I'm willing to extend myself if they want to learn some of the things that I'm good at. I'm not going to be that for them so they don't have to do it, but I don't mind helping them develop that skill. And this karmic relationship, we could say it doesn't have to have the experience of rebirth, of reincarnation. It can be even just this karmic relationship could be, well, my patterns and their patterns are a good match. I had a girlfriend once who had the phrase, "Oh, our demons play well together," and that's in essence this. There's the persona mass that we're presenting work well together, but also underneath of that, somehow the things that we're hiding from, the dark things, um, they're dark, but they also can be very powerful. And those things seem to dance well together. And it's a situation in that case that either we descend into a habitual karmic relationship of toxicity, which by negative attributes both are supported by and support their negative attributes, and then it's a downward spiral, or it could be the opposite, that our darknesses help evolve one another so that those darknesses are brought to light and we evolve them to become assets, not liabilities. Is that much making sense?
It does. It does.
Okay. So, yeah. Did you have a question or?
Oh, you read my mind. I actually have a question.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah.
it's personal. This was sometime in the 80s
Mm-hmm.
when I met a person. It was at an ashram, and
Mm-hmm.
I never went back to the ashram for a month. And later, when I went, that same person came and she says, "Where were you?" I said, "I know you. I want to avoid you, you know." And then she turns around. She says, "I also know you, you know." And it was like some past connection. We went out, but in the end, it didn't work out, you know. Sometimes I ask, this relationship, is it based on the past actions or is it presently what you're thinking about?
Well, okay. I personally think it's both things. I think you can easily explain it depending on your perception of reality. But for me, I have a relative certainty um, of reincarnation, but I also recognize that the same interpretation could be absolutely free of any otherworldly experience, that it could be just in this lifetime, in that
Mm.
we're not who we think we are because we're not aware of the person we've become. None of us choose, none of us has chosen to become the person we've become. It's a social contract, as we were talking before, that we sign when we're 3.5. It's probably around 3 years old that the last time that anyone of us was authentic, unless we go through the purpose of the, well, I don't want to call it the ego death, but I would call the ego taming, bringing the ego to heel. So the ego becomes the servant, not the master. Um, And that's in the sense that we become a pattern of behavior. And that pattern of behavior is based on a pattern of perception, that we see what we look for and then we adapt our behavior to be presentable. So we
Okay.
start to identify with certain ideologies, and those ideologies are based on ideals. We see an ideal of what we want to be, and then an ideology builds around that. A social ideology builds around that ideal. And then in the pursuit of that, we begin to identify with that we're attempting to become. And the problem with that, once an identity forms, morality goes out the window. If somebody does something to threaten your identity, that's we perceive that as a a uh, existential threat, that we or who we think we are will die if that person continues, or that outside um, entity or experience threatens who we've come to think, who we think we are. So, I am an American. I am a freedom loving individual. Oh, well, that means anybody who presents a different form of perception, like, oh, you don't believe in democracy. You're uh, not a democratic capitalist, but um, a communistic uh, socialist. Um, that's a threat to my identity, and now I can justify killing you to preserve my way of life. It's a certain madness, and um, that madness grows out of any uh, cognitive dissonance when we're presented with information, with words or actions that confuses us and who we have come to believe we are, or how we fit into society. We begin to have this sensation of a schism between who we think we are and who we're expecting ourselves and expecting others to be. Is that making sense?
It does. It does. Also,
Right.
very interesting. Like, when I was young, I would, see the thoughts running in myself, and I
Mm-hmm.
used to question the same thoughts, whether it's running into another person. But at that time, there was no like identification of who you are. It's only as you grow, you start identifying, and then as I start identifying, I find that I actually lose what I have.
Yes, yes. So that's a good point. Now, the interesting thing is um, I just want to refine your statement, because it's you when you're young, you don't consciously identify with who you are. But the truth is, by the time you're late, the end of the seventh year, 8 years old, you have an identity that is well formed, and you are unconsciously identifying with that. You're not aware how much you're identifying with it. So it's when you mature, and some people never do this, but when you mature, you start to occasionally step back and look at your thought process and begin to question, well, why is this what I accept as truth? How did that come about? And perhaps if somebody has a different opinion than I do, a different belief, then they must know something I don't. And it's that recognition of maybe, maybe something. In fact, maybe everything I know is wrong. And by and large, I would say that's the case for all of us. Everything is we know is wrong because we're not aware that this process is happening. So we're not seeing reality at all. We're not seeing what's actually happening. We're not seeing actually, but we're caught in actuality because we're not seeing reality. We're seeing our personal reality, and our personal reality is completely and utterly filtered through our persona mask. Is that making sense?
A lot of sense. A lot.
Yeah. So we're constantly projecting out, and we're also and we're projecting out how we want to be seen, but we're also receiving, we're also filtering the whole of reality outside. And we believe that's happening, but it's not actually what's happening. We're only seeing the sliver that we want to see. We're looking through it the way we want to. And then there's a more profound problem that I've said this before, but according to Hindu tradition, uh, we have we have four Vedas, and they're referred to constantly. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was attempting to recognize them, so that they came more up to date with more explicit understandings we have through science, but none of them uh, challenge or deny science. It's just we've come to recognize that the original language was more acutely in agreement to our understandings now than it was in our understanding the last 1,000 years, that they knew things we now realize we're only coming to understand now. But it was said that there were 100 Vedas originally, and they've been lost. And I'm suggesting that that was never the case. The 100 Vedas, the four that we have, are the 2.5 to 4% of reality that we can perceive through our senses, our physical senses, because we weren't, as animals, as mind body construct, we haven't evolved to know the truth. We've evolved to survive and procreate. Our job as an animal is to live long enough to mature, and to mature enough to then procreate, to give birth to another generation. And that's a species obligation that, we're meant to be here long enough to create more vessels, so that we can cross the sea of time. But that relationship then says a lot about how we experience reality. That we don't see things as they are. We don't see the truth because we probably couldn't handle the truth. We see enough to protect our physical life, but there's a lot more going on that we have no idea about. And where this gets very strange, I won't go too far into this, but there's within the Sumerian cuneiform texts, there's texts which we hadn't translated so much. We discovered a lot back in the mid 20th century, mid to late 20th century. We discovered through archaeological digs really ancient texts. Some of them go back 6,000 years. And there were lots of things which we hadn't translated because they didn't seem important. One of the texts that was transferred at a later date, which seemed to be amongst things that were just mm, records of statistical records and historical records of, like trading of certain goods, gold or wheat or commodities. But one text, the researcher who started to transcribe it, when she first started to translate it, she actually stopped and couldn't go back for it for a while because it was so confrontational. But she eventually did finish transcribing it, and it was about the creation, or not the creation, but the transportation, the importation of cats into this world, because it was said in the translation that humans had increasing experience of disturbance from transdimensional beings, that there were, particularly at night times, entities entering the rooms and making people quite agitated, because they were transdimensional beings stepping through, shall we say, cracks in the veil, in the fabric of time, space time. And so they, in these texts, talk about bringing cats from another reality. Now, whether that means from another planet, another dimension, or another time, but bringing cats into this reality, which were not native, but were created in that other reality. Now, whether created means genetically modified or developed, but brought here to serve the same purpose they served in this other place, in this higher dimension, which was to become guardians of the gates. So, where cats seem to be staring at things in the corner, they might really, really be seeing things that we can't see.
Tell me, is it the same with the dogs?
There is something similar with the dogs, but apparently the cats have a finer ability to do this, and that might be related to the iris, to the cat's iris, the way they have a like a almond shape or Vesica Pisces shaped iris, rather than the round one that dogs have, which is more like ours. Um, there's uh, there's there's other mythology which we could talk about, the um, uh, which relates to dogs, which may relate to what you're saying, but it would have a slightly different aspect, that the cat is more a watcher. And this means, the watcher means it's a witness, so that it's more pointing out and saying, I see you. I see you. And it's just that I see you that's enough. Apparently, um, apparently, the the well, what we could call um, watchers are aware of what they called in the ancient Essene traditions archons.
It's very interesting. When growing up, when the cat makes certain noise at night, my dad will actually chase the cat away. Then once I asked my dad, I said, "What's happening here?" He said the cats, they see and hear much, much more than the human being. Sometimes
Yes.
he says they are evil entity and they are able to see, and he says even the dogs can do that. And that sound itself, he will just pick it up, and I didn't like that sound at all, when they make the sound when they see evil.
Yeah, yeah. Now, in the way of understanding this, so the reason I mention it is because um, it's said, so I'm talking, but lots of different traditions from all over the world, it's said that these archons or entities, um, they their power is in their in you not knowing they exist. So there's a saying of the devil's greatest trick or greatest power is to make you think he doesn't exist. Well, let's not say devil, but an entity that doesn't have your best interest in mind. We might think of them as energetic vampires, ener- entities that live off our negative energy. Um, they deliberately hold us back from evolving from an animal state into higher consciousness. Um, but they see us through our energetics, and and their power is in our not being aware of them, because when we're not aware of them, it's easier for them to trigger us. But once seen, right? If once seen, they lose their power. So they deliberately avoid falling to within our field of focus. And they're very much aware when we're looking in their direction, so that they're constantly trying to stay on our periphery, on this just outside the edge of our field of vision, or just coming just within, barely into our field of vision. So it's said that you can see them through your peripheral perception. And that means if you can look forward, so your eyes are pointing in a specific direction, but don't focus your eyes, that your awareness goes out to the edges of your peripheral field, that you can actually see them. If they're around, if you can feel them and then defocus, you can just see them like a shadow in the corner. And that if you develop that technique, it is said that you can be very good at spotting them. Now, personally, I actually have seen this myself, but I know somebody who caught this on camera. They were watching a film at night at home, the room was dark, and something seemed to move at the edge, and they actually could hear it picked up a sound that wasn't coming from the television. And it definitely was like a voice, but like a voice from behind you. And so I'm just saying, it's not to want to foster fantasy or delusion, but just to open one's mind to the possibility of, yes, maybe we only see a sliver of what's there. And to answer your question about the dog, there's an ancient tradition, particularly in the native Mesoamericans, that Grandmother Moon creates the universe, and she finishes by creating Earth, and then she sends her dog to go see, says, go to Earth and have an experience, have a look around, and come back and tell me what you think of my creation. The dog's gone a really long time, but finally comes back, and she asked him, "So what did you think?" And he was just like, "Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so amazing." "Well, what did you like about it?" "Oh, well, there's there's rocks, there's beautiful landscape, mountains and valleys, and there's lakes and rivers and vast oceans, seas and vast oceans, and and the plants are amazing, and there's so many different shades of green you wouldn't believe, and there's animals, such amazing animals, and there's animals that are in the water and animals that are on land and actually animals that are in the sky." And she said, "Well, what did you like most?" And he stops, and she sees the dog in his silence is starting to cry a little bit, a tears coming, forming in the bottom of his eyes. And she says, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, my favorite part, the most beautiful part is in that world on the earth, everyone has a family. Everyone has someone to look after." And she said,
Wow.
"Well, why are you sad?" "Because I don't have anyone to look after." And she says, go back, and you can stay." And when he arrives back, the last creation, which was the human being, had then come while he had been away. Grandmother Moon said ahead of him, human beings for him to look after. So this is a way of describing that relationship. And my yoga master said, um, if you came into this life and were incarnated and meant to be a teacher and you didn't teach, if you failed to meet your destiny, you have to come back as a dog.
Wow. Wow.
So,
Vidata, I want to come back to that entity where you said, off-site. That's how
mhm.
they also see the aura. But I just
Yes,
want to bring the aspect of sensing. Sometimes you sense, you feel, and
yes.
like like in my case, it's like right at the back, the noodle points. It just picks up straight away. And what is this sensing compared to the sight?
So there's clairvoyance, that's seeing something. There's clairaudience, hearing things that aren't there. And there's clairsentience, and that's a sensation, a physical sensation. So we want to understand, particularly in the English language. I'm not a linguist at all, but um, in the English language, we have this word feeling, but feelings aren't real, because to feel something uh, means to sense it. But feelings, we have an obvious distinction between feelings and sensations. But to feel something and sense it in a physical sense, it's a little bit closer, but still it's not the same word. So to to sense is a physical sensation. Those are real. They're actual things, bodily sensations, information, but feelings, as in emotions, are filters that we place on those sensations. And that's where our perceptions become limiting beliefs. So a sensation is a sensation,
Yeah.
but it then has, because of being human, the world as we experience is an intersection between language and geometry. So the geometry, we could say, is there's only one dimension. There's the inner reality, that interpersonal reality, and there's the outer actuality, but there's a geometric relationship. And that's first and foremost to do with the geometry of time. There's a frequency of perception that's descending from pure consciousness, which is vibrating so fast, it might as well be standing still. It's the speed of light. it then descends, that conscious awareness descends into the visible realm. It's what we can see, and that's largely in the mind. So that, and then it descends further into what we can hear, and that's a vibration we feel in the heart. And then it descends even further into a physical sensation. So those are the three dimensions that aren't really dimensions, they're just frequency. It's in duality because obviously a frequency has to have a peak and a trough to it. So there is a dimension to that. There's the lowest and the highest aspect of that frequency. And there's also the sending and receiving, the projecting and the reception quality of any frequency. We have a physical sense projection, and then we have a sense perception, our senses that receives it. So the three-dimensional reality we think is actually just visible, auditory, or hearing, or feeling, and then the physical sensation. And we label them with words, which are either positive or negative. So we can say our reality mimics the quantum field because our reality is determined by taking those physical sensations, and they have a positive or negative slant to them, or positive negative quality to them. And they also have a angle of momentum, which that quality, positive and negative, is either descending or ascending. We have certain perceptions that are negative and are draw us downward, or we have positive that draw us upward to higher frequency. And that's just like particles, quantum particles, because particles, electrons, don't have a spin to them, although they have an angle of momentum, but they aren't solid things, so they can't have a spin. And they're also don't exist as a thing, so they can't be moving in the sense of already a pre-direction negative in magnetics, North Pole, South Pole, but they have a potential of positive and negative, and they have a potential of angle of spin. And actually, this is where all this relates to yoga, because if a field's spinning one direction, it will draw a current in a specific direction. And if it's spinning the opposite way, it will draw the current the opposite way. So things we do in yoga, if your fingers on your right hand, they've got a right hand spin, so they will be drawing the current upward. And your left hand, your fingers represent four different currents, so it's a spiraling current that has a left hand spin, which means it's turning to the right, and it will draw current downward through it. Is that making sense?
Makes a lot of sense. What about
Yeah,
the Rumi, the dancers they do?
same thing, absolutely same thing, and that causes specific things to happen inside the brain that they generate. It's an elevating state of consciousness. It literally, the electromagnetic field creates a current, which creates specific biochemical cascade, which creates an ecstatic state.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So maybe it's getting close to the end. It's about it's on 111 here. So
Perfect.
maybe it's a good place to close, and we'll pick up again with these symbols. We'll talk about everything we've talked about is a good groundwork for the two images, which is the I am and the I aim. So the higher self is the I am. That's like the Lord or the liege. And this is light itself. And then the lower self is the aim, the I lowercase I, the A lowercase I, uppercase M. So you've got a triangle there that says I am, but across the bottom, if you read in, then it's saying on the horizontal plane, it's aiming. So the servant, the vessel in the vassal, the vassal is servant, the valet is inside the body, the vessel, and its job is to serve the light. It's a spark from the source, and its purpose is to serve, not be served. And so we'll step into that, and then there's the crossing symbol there, which is below, which represents the four light chakras, which is also the light body and how we form the consciousness. So maybe this is a good place to close.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Bless you. And thank you for absolutely brilliant questions. I have to say, you're a gem for that. So I'll wish everybody a good night, have a good evening, and say Sat Sri Akal Ji.
Sat Sri Akal Ji.
Thank you so much,
Waheguru Ji Ka
Vanessa.
Khalsa.